We're excited to chat about a topic near and dear to my heart, closing the digital divide. Today with Open Broadband. Alan, how are you?
I'm doing great, Evan. Thanks for having me on your show today.
Well, thanks for being here. We're both commiserating about our lifetime in the telecom industry. And wow, things have changed. We're going to dive into a lot here. Maybe introduce yourself, your background, and who is Open Broadband?
Sure. So, Alan Fitzpatrick, I'm one of the two co-founders of the company. Open Broadband is an ISP. We're based in the North Carolina area, but we operate in 4 states. We operate in Virginia, North and South Carolina, and Florida. We provide internet service primarily to those in underserved areas. So we go into the primarily rural areas, but oftentimes urban areas as well that just need a better internet option. So we're a flat out ISP targeting the underserved.
Well, it's a great mission, although a tough business, as you doubt know better than I. Maybe explain the vision, the mission from its inception. What was the big idea when you started a few years back?
Sure. So, as you have mentioned earlier, we both have been in the telecom industry a very long time. I've been in the CLEC world. I've been in the long distance world. Back in the day, we could charge for long distance phone calls. I worked in the data center industry. It was the end of 2016 when I kept reading article after article about how rural America was being left behind in the internet world. This is pre-pandemic, right? But if you lived outside of the main metropolitan areas with high density, you didn't really have a whole lot of good options when it came to internet service. So at that time, we were looking to sell the data center business that I was in. So I was trying to decide what I wanted to do next. And a partner and I decided to get together and form Open Broadband. So we decided to be an ISP. We would specifically go into these underserved areas and give them an option for just high speed internet. Now, back then, just getting 25 by 3 service
Mm,
was, monumentally better than what they had because most people were using DSL or satellite internet and not Starlink satellite internet. It was, the old HughesNet and
mm.
Viasat. So people really just needed a better option. So we just kind of saw that whole environment laying out, and we had the background in the internet business, and we decided why not just form a company just to go after this. So that's how we started back in 2017.
Love the backstory. And tell us about your approach, how it's different, unique from today's market, dominated by cable companies and like you said, DSL primarily. Tough to make an entrance as an ISP, is it not?
It is. One of the toughest questions we had to get started was how do we afford to put out a network from scratch and be profitable, right? How to make it sustainable. How does one just form an ISP? It's not for the faint of heart. It is capital intensive. So we decided to start off with pretty much of an agnostic technology approach. We knew that there were 3 key components to the network we wanted to build. We wanted to have a data center, it's where we're going to connect to the world and hit all the other carriers. We were going to need to have fiber optic capacity in the network to get from the data center out to the areas we wanted to reach. And then we wanted to connect the rural subscriber, whether it was a resident or a small business or a government or a park or wherever they needed. And when we took a look at sort of those 3 segments, the trickiest part was that last mile connection. How do you do that cost effectively? And we looked at everything that was available and thought that fixed wireless was the most cost effective way to quickly get out in the market. It's not going to provide the capacity of, say, a fiber optic to the home,
Mm.
but when we're doing it on our dime and we're trying to get it out there quickly, fixed wireless sure had a lot of advantages.
Indeed, and we could spend a whole show just on hybrid fiber and fixed wireless. We'd probably lose half the people potentially watching, but maybe talk about the challenges and opportunities in serving underserved communities, which is a noble mission. What was the idea there?
So yeah, we are very mission focused. So I appreciate you
Hmm.
using that word. So we're a for-profit entity, but we are focused on that
Mm.
mission. So the first thing you have to realize in these areas is it's not very dense from a population perspective. So you have to make your business case and you have to make your decisions based on fewer potential subscribers.
Mm,
which means we have to keep our costs down, which needs, we need to be very pragmatic about how we're making decisions and where we go. So that was one of our biggest challenges, was making sure that the area was going to be sustainable from a revenue perspective and the low density areas. Then we had to obviously find a way to get those people online. So I mentioned having a data center and getting fiber optic circuits. Well, fiber didn't always go where you want it to go. So one of our challenges was finding that capacity. Where is it, and how do we get it back to our data center, and how do we do that cost effectively as well as that last mile? So I was doing all those different pieces and then building a team at the same time. So we were a startup, and we started
right.
off with 2 people, right? We have over 20 people now. But when you're hiring people and putting them in the field and engaged in this for the first time, you got this whole learning curve you're going through. So that was another one of our challenges, was building the company, putting together the technologies, doing it in a way that was sustainable from a cost perspective, and still get the speeds and the service levels that the customers are expecting. Probably the other driving force for us, I wanted to tie into this equation, is service. We really believe that ISPs should be all about service. So it's internet service provider. That's what the big S is for. So we pride ourselves on the service level we provide to customers. So it's not unusual for customers to call our technicians directly. I've had customers call me directly, or our other co-founder. We're very responsive, 24/7, and it shows. If you look at our Google review scores, we have a 4.7 out of 5.
Nice.
How many ISPs have a score of 4.7? Most people hate their ISPs, right? You look at net promoter scores of the big
Yeah,
cable
raise the
companies.
hand.
So we
Yeah,
we
no, it's
realized that
tough. That's impressive. Congratulations.
oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Well, we realized that, we're sort of a no-name company, kind of coming up grassroots. People don't recognize the brand necessarily, so we have to fight and, for what we do. And we knew that service level was going to be key. If we didn't have a good service level, we weren't going to be able to acquire and retain customers. So that's one of our big focuses. Just how do you provide that responsiveness for customers? Granted, we're not going to be perfect in every situation. We have mistakes, equipment goes bad, things happen just like anybody else. But the way that we respond to those challenges, we think makes all the difference. And our customers stick with us because of that.
Brilliant. You talk about public-private partnerships. What does that mean in terms of engaging with local communities and different stakeholders in the current, regulatory, other economic environment? How does that work?
Good question. And it has changed over time. I mean, even though
Hmm.
we're only a 7-year-old company, it's changed in 7 years. So in the early days, we found that the need for better broadband, and particularly in the rural areas, was pretty well known by the counties and the towns and the people that were experiencing it. But if you were outside of that world, it wasn't really as widely known. So our public-private partnerships at that time were very much sort of county specific. It was working with local communities, county commissioners, county managers, town managers, people that really had a need. I'll give you a story as an example for this. Mount Olive, North Carolina. Mount Olive may resonate with people listening to this from the pickle company, Mount Olive
Ah,
Pickles.
right. Of
Yeah,
course.
pretty big brand. So they were desperate for better internet options in town. And the town manager said, "We really want open broadband here. How can we attract you? What do you need?" So we kind of gave them a list of, we need some anchor accounts. We need to have access to some water towers where we could hang some antennas. And they just jumped, right in and to help us with that. So we're on several of the town water towers. We actually provide service to the town. They
Nice.
complained that the local airport uh, was on DSL service, the airport, and they had an emergency medical unit there. It's how in the world do you operate an airport on DSL service? So that was one of our first activations. Was turning up. We started off with 100 meg service for them, and then we ramped it up. But they just brought us opportunities like that. So it was partnering with the town, and the town had felt the pain. they were getting complaints from people. There was a new business that had moved in and acquired land. It was a peanut processing plant.
Hmm.
They acquired land, acquired the building, and found out there was no good internet service. So who did they go to? They complained to the carriers, who basically didn't give them the time of
Good
day.
luck with that. Yeah.
And then they complained to the town and they complained to the county. So that's where some of our initial public private partnerships arose. It was situations like that in Mount Olive, where the local people were hearing the complaints. They needed a solution. They needed somebody to come in and say, we'll work with you and we'll put this together.
Brilliant. Great story. So you're reading the headlines on the federal level, tens of billions of dollars being allocated for rural broadband. And of course, it makes you sounds all warm and fuzzy. But what does that mean to you, companies like you? How does that trickle down to your level?
So in the early days, in the sort of the Mount Olive days, if we could get a grant for $50,000, that was a lot. We could do something with $50,000, and that was, not an insignificant decision for a town council to make and things like
Sure.
that. So we were not facing a real competitive threat from the big carrier entities. These were just small things. But you just raised a point now that there are billions of dollars coming down from the federal government for grants to serve underserved areas, basically to do what we're doing, but now there's
Right.
billions of dollars behind it. So what happens when you throw billions of dollars into the water? All the sharks arise, right? All the big companies are suddenly now interested. Oh, we can serve the underserved area now because you're going to give us, X
Mm.
million dollars per project. So what we're seeing is a lot of the areas that we were going into basically with a clean slate, we were the only ones wanting to help, are now getting government funding to go do what they wouldn't do before. And we're
Mm.
facing big companies kind of going in to try to save the same or try to solve the same problem. So that's probably been the
Interesting.
biggest thing for us. And as you can imagine, the rules for the government programs aren't necessarily oriented toward small startup oriented companies,
Mm.
right? Everything like, what's your financial stability and can you show 5 years worth of audited financials? And it's like, oh, we've only been around for 7 years. Yeah, we can show you financials, but it's not going to be the same as asking AT&T or, the big cable company for their financials or matching funds. A lot of the government programs are now saying, oh, we're going to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars, as they should be. We're going to require, all these matching funds and all this upfront line of credit. And let's see, what else have we run into? Some of the states now are saying that the ISP has to do the whole project on our own, and we'll get paid back a percentage after completion. Well, for a small company like us, getting paid back later isn't real helpful. We need
Right.
money now to help us
Mm.
go build it. So, unfortunately, some of the well intended restrictions and rules on these large programs are not really designed for smaller companies. They're really designed for the bigger players. So, it's causing us to have to evaluate how we do things, right? What opportunities we go after. And we've actually had our first cases where we just say, no, the rules for this just don't match what we can do, as much as we'd like to help that community.
Well, from the government, and I'm here to help. That's the message, right? Um, in terms of your footprint, maybe give us an idea. Where's your network today, and how do you see yourself again, like selectively expanding over time? Are you looking at other regions around the U.S. outside the Southeast?
When we started the company, we had the goal of being a southeastern U.S. provider. So southeastern U.S., I would consider basically Virginia to Florida to Alabama. So it's a pretty bold initial goal for two guys starting a company from scratch to be an ISP across all those states. But today we've made good progress. We're in North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, and Florida. So we sort of skipped Georgia temporarily, but we're always looking at opportunities in Georgia. Uh, each state, we've basically go into particular counties and towns where there's an underserved area and see what we can do in that particular area. If an area is already covered and they don't have a big need, then really not going there. Although some of the needs have surprised us. I'll give you an example.
Hmm.
Charlotte, North Carolina. That's one of the larger cities in the Southeast. We
Mm.
initially did not think that Charlotte would be an area that we should focus on. We live here, but we always thought the big needs were in the rural parts of the state, and that is kind of where we started. But over time, we found out that people in urban areas aren't always happy with the options that they have,
Yeah, of course.
and some urban areas, as you know, sort of get redlined. I'm not
Mm.
saying that Charlotte's in that situation, but some cities, there have been some studies that show that certain areas of town get that fiber optic investment and other parts of town do not. So even if it's a rural, or I'm sorry, even if it's an urban area, it doesn't mean that it's not underserved, right? Or needs more competition. So that's been sort of an aha for us over time as we've expanded into the 4 states we're in. We started doing more work in some of the urban areas. So we started off very rural. We're still very rural, but we've done more and more urban opportunities wherever there's a good need. Now, at the same time, I have no interest at all in going head to head against Google Fiber or some of the other providers. I think that'd be silly, right? Why would a startup, have that as their goal? That'd be a pretty audacious goal. But no, we had no intention of doing that. We'd rather go to areas where competition was weak, where there was a big need, where we could make a big difference. But we have been surprised that sometimes it is in urban areas.
Interesting. And do you see a sweet spot in small business, SMEs, SMBs, sort of home workers, large enterprises, businesses? Where do you think your most opportunity will come from?
At this stage of our company, it's residential and small business.
Hmm.
Small business where we're dealing primarily with the owners, and the owners are
Okay.
concerned about their service level and how much they're paying and responsiveness, and they value all the things that we do well. The larger the company becomes, as far as a customer set, they're looking for things that may be needed from a larger carrier. They want an SDN network that's international,
Mm.
or they have 400 locations across the U.S. and need to have
Right.
them all in the same carrier. We're not set up for that type of a customer. But yeah, you take your small business, we're a perfect fit for them because we're going to be so much more responsive than the big guys. At least that's the way we feel.
Nice. Tell us a bit about, if you could, your tech stack on the hybrid fiber fixed wireless side. How's it evolved over the last number of years, and what do you see moving forward? 5G, something else that's been more effective, maybe.
So I mentioned the data center earlier. Initially, we did not have our own data center. We're
Hmm.
just two guys with a startup company. It's kind of hard to like immediately start off with a data center. So we leased space, right? We
Hmm.
got started that way. But over time, we actually acquired our own space. We built out our own data center. We've added multiple carriers. We're now doing our own BGP routing. We have our own IP blocks. So we transitioned over the last 7 years into actually owning and running our own data center, whereas before we started off with leasing. A lot of the fiber optic work we were leasing. We started our first fiber to the home projects.
Oh,
So we
wow.
have a big project just south of Spartanburg, South Carolina, where we're lighting up 750 homes with fiber to the home. So that was not something we started off with. We were all fixed wireless initially. Uh, and on the fixed wireless side, that's evolved as well.
Mm.
So CBRS, which is a technology in the wireless world that has come out the past few years, is probably the majority of our new installations on the wireless side. And in the CBRS world, there's multiple manufacturers that kind of provide that 100 megabit service that's really becoming the requirement these days. Uh, but Tirana, Toronto Wireless has come out with
Mhm.
their own proprietary CBRS and 5 gigahertz versions that are really doing some amazing things with
Mm.
interference cancellation. And it's allowing us to deliver like 400, 500 megabit service
Wow.
today. And the roadmap is actually to do a full gigabit on this
No kidding.
going forward. So we progressed with technology. We started off with the ubiquities and cambium technology, which
Hmm.
is pretty prevalent in the wireless world. Migrated up to some of the other CBRS gear before going to Tirana. We did get our first 6 gigahertz experimental licenses from the FCC, so we're starting
Hmm.
to use that. We're very excited about what 6 gigahertz can do. Because that spectrum, along with what Tirana is doing, can give us that full gigabit for a wireless connection. So, okay, fiber is now quoting what, 8 gig and 10 gig and 20 gig. I don't know where the limit's eventually going to be to the house, but you start talking about a gigabit, that's going to be more than just about anybody needs. So it's really putting fixed wireless, on that equal plane level from a speed perspective with fiber, which we love to see. And at the same time, the cost structure of the fixed wireless is so much less. It's like 20% of the cost of fiber,
Wow,
if
20%.
and it gets
That's,
deployed faster. So
of
you'll
course.
see some studies on the line that say, hey, if you take this, $42 billion of federal money, you can stretch it a lot farther if you combine some of these new fixed wireless technologies along with fiber and get the best bang for your buck. But when the rules come out and say you have to do one technology or the other, you have a hammer, everything's a nail. You got to have a hammer. Then your money isn't going to go as far, and things are going to take longer, and you run into all kinds of other issues. But we're hopeful that a sort of a blend of technologies and a hybrid approach will sort of win the day with the state broadband offices. And the whole idea is service. Get back to that S in ISP. It's all about service, and the customer doesn't really care what the technology is, right? So as long as the speed is good and snappy performance and it's affordable rate, all the things you would normally expect from a service provider. A lot of us in the industry might get too caught up with technology, and this technology is better than that one. But at the end of the
Oh
day,
yeah,
most
we love our 5 letter acronyms in telecom or 4 letter acronyms, so we enjoy that stuff immensely. Um, what about the marketing front? I mean, a small company, it's tough to acquire customers. What's worked for you, just out of curiosity? Hopefully, we get a few customers from this show, but or partners. What's worked for you in going direct to consumers, SMBs?
so we do as much online as possible.
Hmm.
That and having good service levels. We believe that the best referral is going to come from a happy customer. So if we provide excellent service, if we're affordable, we're responsive, then people are going to tell their friends. Particularly when we go to these underserved areas, they're in need. So if somebody can identify a carrier and says, "Hey, I got great service at my house," they tell their friends. And where do they tell their friends? On Facebook, on nextdoor.com, on any social media tool of your choice. But delivering that good service and then promoting ourselves online, we get most of our signups directly off of our website. We do work with our partners. So getting back to working with towns and counties
Hmm.
and other organizations, sort of jointly promoting what we're doing, getting the word out. But again, happy customers are the key to everything.
Happy customers. Well, on that high note, thank you much for joining, sharing your vision and mission, and so informative. And the broadband was great. So hopefully a testament to the latest and greatest tech. Thanks, Alan. Appreciate that and your mission. Really amazing. And thanks for watching, everyone. Reach out to Open Broadband if you have ideas as a partner, customer opportunities. I'm sure they would appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on the show, Evan. I really enjoyed the time.
Appreciate it. Bye bye, everyone.